Hi there, I am Mohie and this is Egyptology. Today's story is about the discovery that changed our knowledge about Egyptian mummification. In 1896, some villagers from a place called Gabalain led British archaeologist Wallace Budge to a burial ground where they claimed to have found mummies. It was true, and Budge have found a total of 6 mummies in a shallow sandy grave. These mummies were identified as the oldest Egyptian mummies to be discovered, and they were dated from the pre-dynastic period. Later, these mummies were shipped to the British Museum. These mummies were naked, placed in the fetal position, and were thought to be naturally preserved by desert sand. 4 years later, around 1900, a similar mummy appeared at the Turin Museum in Italy. It was purchased by Ernesto Schiaparelli without any documentation and were given the number 293. The mummy was dated around 3700 to 3500 BC, and like the Gabalain mummies, this one was thought to be also naturally preserved by desert sand. After all, it was very important back then that Italy acquire such a mummy to equal what the British have. And no one ever dared to think that Egyptians might have deliberately mummified these mummies. A silent agreement was made that all of these mummies were preserved by the forces of nature. Anyway, the Turin mummy, dubbed Fred, remained at the museum without any further studies. But after more than 100 years, this claim was thrown into doubt by a research team from Macquarie University. The story began when the team got its first hint in the early 90s. After a microscopic study performed on mummy wrapping which contained remnant of embalming materials, such as resin. It took them more than 10 years to confirm these findings, and the results were published on peer-reviewed journal PLOS ONE, which happened in 2014. It caused a sensation back then and raised the question, could Egyptian mummification art be that old? This study was followed by another, which was performed on Fred himself, the mummy at Turin. The result confirmed that Fred was also deliberately mummified. The study also helped to reconstruct the Egyptian mummification recipe. The team performed microscopic and chemical analysis beside radiocarbon dating and concluded the existence of embalming agent and funerary treatment of the body. Substances were found such as plant oil, heated resin, aromatic plant extract, and antibacterial agents. Surprisingly, some of these materials were used in similar proportions used by Egyptian embalmers some 2,500 years later. The study also concluded that Fred was originally buried in the same area as these of the British Museum, and the detailed study was published on August of 2018 in the Journal of Archaeological Science.